you feel like life is chaos and you need some grounding, or maybe you need a change in your life, perhaps you need a career chaos Sherpa. That's right, a Sherpa. That's our next guest on the Charleston Women Podcast.
This is Charleston Women Podcast, where you can meet like-minded, strong, independent, professional, and inspiring local women. This is Charleston Women Podcast.
It is my pleasure to welcome Denise Beers-Kiepper to the Charleston Women Podcast, the founder and chief vision officer at DBK Coaching and Consulting. Denise, it is so good to see you.
Thank you, Erin. It's so good to be here. I am honored to be a part of this podcast and to get a chance to chat with you today.
Yeah. So I said like a very fancy title, your consulting company, but really you self-define yourself as the career chaos Sherpa.
Yes.
I remember you told me this several years ago, and I was like, that's brilliant because it creates intrigue. So I'm sure everyone listening to it, what is a career chaos Sherpa? What is it that you do?
Thank you for asking. And so I landed on it because it was very personal to me. I had a few moments in my professional career where I entered into chaos, or chaos came to me. And in reflecting upon it, what I realized is that chaos is actually not a negative, which is where most people categorize it, but it's a signal. It's an opportunity calling us to pay attention that there might be something else that you're supposed to be leaning into, or another career place that you're supposed to go, or a different direction in your business. And so what I do is, it's very hard to do it for yourself. I had to have people help me. And so I help people navigate change, complex and complicated situations or scenarios, and just things that feel chaotic, to just ground it and find that red string or that tether that's kind of hanging down in the center of the storm. You can't see it until somebody helps you find it, and it's leading you to the next great thing. And so we turn that chaos into confidence that then lets you take action towards your next place.
Okay, so who would be a good person to find you? Is this someone that's gone through a dramatic life change? Someone that's gone through a breakup? Is this someone that has lost their job, or maybe someone who's just looking to change their job, or is it all the above?
So yes, and yes.
Yeah.
A lot of times people say, "Oh, do you do personal or professional work?" And I'm trying to figure out, are you a life coach, or are you a career coach? And the answer is yes to all of those things. I'm ICF certified, so I can coach in any space. And my belief, and foundationally because of what I found in my professional career over the course of when I was in corporate and now doing what I'm doing, is the way that you show up best, whether it's in your personal life, in your personal career, in your professional environment, in a team, as a leader, as a business owner, an entrepreneur, is when you're able to be attached to your authentic self. And so it's really all those things. And so, yes, if you're going through change in any way, shape, or form, I help you, kind of get grounded in who you are and what really matters to you. Because a lot of times we end up in careers, or even sometimes in business environments, because someone else said, "Oh, that would be a great idea." And not necessarily because it was the thing that drove us in our passion and in our core. And so getting grounding in that idea of what are the values that really light you up? Where are the places where you can just shine? And that's some of the work that we do to get to that place of confidence, so that you can take action, whether that's action within your existing environment, or it's moving to a new place.
All right. So how do you get to from point A to point B? How do you find, if you're in a career that's not a good fit, how do you navigate with someone to help them figure out, really what he or she should be doing? And I know you talk a lot about strengths, right?
Yes. And so that's the first step. I use Strength Finder, which is a Gallup tool, with all of my clients. And I have come to find that one to be the most approachable. I have a lot of certifications over the course of my corporate career. This was the one where most people could relate and easily translate this into understanding what it means for them, as well as other people and other environments. And so knowing your strengths help you understand where you can really use your superpowers at their best. Knowing the things that are in your bottom zone. So there are 34 strength zones, and the top is the place where you're like, yeah, I can do it all day long, and I'm in flow, and I'm just loving this work. And the bottom is where you feel like it's soul sucking. And one of the things I found, Erin, is that after COVID, a lot of people had this moment of reflection, whether it was business owners or people in their professional career or in their personal life, where they said, this is not fulfilling and I want something meaningful. And that has really spurred some of the, if not many of the conversations that I've had, where we start with strengths and we learn what those strengths are. And then from there, we also do an iteration around values, because ultimately your values are what drive your strengths. And so they're foundationally intertwined. And if you're a business owner, that magic sauce that really draws people to you is very much attached to your ability to know those things for you, but also then translate it on how it comes out in your business on a day in and day out basis for your clients, for your team members, everything about your brand voice. Attaching it to those strengths and values makes it really powerful and pop.
Right.
In 1996, it was Southern Women to Women magazine. Now it's Charleston Women magazine. Charleston Women is all about strong, capable, confident, hardworking, nurturing, determined, dedicated, and inspiring women. Our readers are business owners, entrepreneurs, mothers, sisters, wives, and grandmothers. Pick up your copy of Charleston Women magazine at Charleston area Harris Teeters and Food Lions. Charleston Women magazine. We are Charleston Women.
You're listening to the Charleston Women Podcast.
So Denise, you mentioned the Strengths Finder. How do we go through that process? It's a quiz that we take. And then my next question to follow that up would be, are people surprised? Like when you see your top strengths, are people sometimes like, I had no idea?
Great question. And so to do the Strength Finder, you can do it by asking me for a link and I can shoot it to you. You can go out there and do Gallup Strength Finder and find it yourself. What I will say is I find that most people, when they see their strengths, absent of someone to help them translate it into real life and understand what each of those strengths qualities actually show up like and what they look like in real life, it's kind of like hard to connect to. But once we talk through it and I help people really see the way that not only the way that their strengths shine and come to life, but also, maybe in moments where you've had conflict or disconnect, a lot of times that's because that's someone who has very different strengths than you. Right. And so really understanding all of that. And to your question around when people look at it, do they go, I don't know. Usually when that happens, it's really more around, I don't understand what that means. So help me understand what that means. And occasionally people will say like, I thought, a lot of times one that comes up is empathy is one of the strengths. And a lot of people will say, I thought empathy would have been way higher for me. I'm so surprised. But then when we talk through the other things that are in their top zone, that's how they show their empathy. It's just that they don't lead with it. And so it's that interpretation of understanding the nuance and the way that all of them play together. And an interesting stat is that when you do this, they're 1 in 34, right? So there's number one strength all the way to 34. And you are 1 in 33 million people who has a match to your exact top 5 in that exact order in the world.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
That's crazy. So there's 5 strengths, 1 in 33 million people would have a match to your 5 in that order.
In that order. Yes.
So where do we go from here? So let's say we take the test online and it says, empathy. What are some other strengths that you frequently see?
So there are the strength gamut is very interesting and they fall into zones. So the first zone is execute. And so that zone of execute has a set of strengths underneath of it. And the word that defines anybody who is high in execute is go. So somebody who's got execute really high might even be described at their highest as shoot, ready, aim. Like I'm going to create action for the sake of action. They're also the people who come into an environment or a team and just get things done, right? And cause everybody else to like take action, as opposed to if there's a spin and everybody's thinking or analysis paralysis, person comes in and says, let's go. This is how we're going to do it, right? And then there's strategic. And so strategic is the ability to see the big picture, to see lots of options, angles. There's some analytic element to that as well. And then the next zone is influence. So think politicians or people who are highly skilled at and using their strengths to pull people in and get them to come along with them. People who run not-for-profits often have high influence because you're like engaging the heart and pulling people in. And then there's relationship building. And so relationship building is just like it sounds, right? It's all about the care and the connection of the people. And so if somebody has relationship building at their highest in their, top 5 predominantly, then they would put that connection with people above everything else, even above getting something done. And so sometimes I don't know why that happens. I've not figured out the magic sauce on that one. So sometimes you'll find conflict between those two zones, right? So somebody who's like, just go. And somebody else is saying, hang on, I'm relationship oriented. How's that going to feel to people?
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
All right. So how do we work with you? Because I still need to take the test, but I'm sure I'd get it back and I would just be like, now where do I go from here? And how do I use my strengths to grow my business, or in your case, to ground my business?
Yes, absolutely. So once you do the strengths test, I always recommend for people to do the full 34, and then you can share that with me in the community. So if you connect with me online, I can give you the specific instructions. There are some other instructions underneath of it. Like, people are really conscious of, there's a right or wrong answer, because we're kind of wired to think all tests have a right or wrong answer. There are no wrong answers or right answers. It's just about your gut. And so I give you like the set of instructions on how to follow through it in a way that is authentic, right? And then it gets shared in the community with me once you do that. And then we set up a time and we start from the top and we spend, a good section of time on our top 10. And then we go all the way to the bottom and we talk about the bottom in the next session. It's usually like 2 or 3 sessions where we talk through just understanding strengths and then how this middle zone like either supports you getting higher in your high zone or can, lift you out of your lower zone. And really the reason why it matters, right, is that when you understand your strengths, it helps you really see yourself in a different light. It helps you show up very authentically, and it helps you understand other people who are really different. So it's not just about you, but it's also helping you understand like, when that person was really difficult with me, it really wasn't about them being difficult to me. It was because they needed something else from me. They needed to hear more information because they're very strategic and they needed details, and they were being very analytic in the way they were approaching it. And I was up here being, very like, just go, let's get it done kind of, action oriented. And so helping people find like that meeting in the middle is very powerful. And then for business owners, one of the things that I do with all of my business owners, and this has been incredibly powerful, is we do the strengths and the values. We put them together. When you put them side by side, it's magical. I just did it this morning with a client, and there's always connection. Right. And then we take powerful words from those 2 sets and we create a true north statement that then we use that for the brand voice all the way through everything we do, the way that we attract people to the business, the way we attract talent to the business, the way that we onboard, the way we build the culture and engage with our team members and our clients. And then it's so clear what matters that you draw the people to you that are really connected to your why.
What do people say after they go through this process with you?
So always, almost always, people say, this is unnerving and I feel very seen. And,
is it a good thing or bad thing? I mean, I can see how it's unnerving, right?
Unnerving and a like, how did I not know this before kind of way. And people say, wow, I wish like if I would have known this when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, 10 years ago, which is why I've started really doing this at all levels of my coaching. I might have made different choices. And people also come to me and say things like, we had this conflict constantly in our business setting, and we couldn't figure out why it was a problem. And now we see why it was a problem, because we really weren't focused on finding people to come to the organization who were aligned with our values. We just wanted people like, get it done. And that really wasn't what we were all about. We were all about heart. And then they showed up without the relationship building strength. And then we were frustrated with them and we kept repeating this pattern until now we understand. And now we seek different things and we structure our conversations and our questions and everything in a different way as a result of it. And so people feel really energized by it because it's very validating, and it lets, I think, especially business owners have a sense of like, okay, now I can see how other people can really emulate the things that mattered to me and why I built this business.
Right. When is a good time for someone to work with you? I know we talked at the beginning, maybe they're, feeling stuck at their job or chaotic, going through change. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast can relate to any of those statements.
Yeah. And so certainly any of those moments are great moments to engage. I would say also, I work with sometimes people who are earlier in their career and wanting to try to figure out where they go next. And I also say, like, listen to the voice in your head. If something isn't connecting for you, you feel like you go home every day and you say something just isn't right, or worse yet, you feel like, as you've heard me say this descriptor, right? I'm putting on a size 00 dress and I'm a size 6. Like I'm acting like it fits, but it doesn't fit. Right. And so listening to that voice and saying there's something there. And then we connect, I come in and we talk about where is that? We sort out what is the disconnect, and this strength work and this value work helps bring to light the places where maybe we were trying to force something that just wasn't meant for us.
I know, let's get into your story a little bit before you reference the dress. I've heard it before. You speak so well to this because you've lived it. You were in a job that was not a good fit for you. You've been through this process that you now teach to others. Just describe to me that feeling for yourself when you actually figured it out and made the change.
Yeah, for sure. It's very personal to me. And I'm very action driven. I have competition pretty high. It's one of my strength zones. And so I'm going to win. Right. And so sometimes to my own detriment, I stayed in situations that felt chaotic or were challenging longer than I should have to prove it that I could. Right. But proving that I could really wasn't the point. And every day I would get up in the morning and I would psych myself up and talk to myself in the mirror like, okay, I can do this, right? And put on my size 00 dress where I felt like I walked into my office like I couldn't breathe. But I smiled and waved like it was a beauty pageant and I was so happy to be there. And then I would walk out every day and have no energy to show up as a mom. Some days I would have physical, issues. I had migraines a lot at that moment in time. And eventually what I recognized was all of these little voices were the things telling me it was time to make a shift. And I was stubbornly like digging my heels in like, no, I like my 00 dress.
Not changing.
I'm not changing. And I think you've heard me say this before, right? Like you don't have to exit the chaotic feeling. You can stay in it. But eventually either it chews you up and spits you out or you burn out. And so it's way better to find that like center. And so for me, I had people who really helped me expertly find that center and see that I was really trying to prove something to people that didn't even care if I was proving it or not. Right. And ultimately what mattered was my own personal fulfillment and the way that I would be able to show up and feel like I was bringing my best every day. And by the way, this is really cool. You only have to do what you love in your strength zones, right? 20% of every day to feel fulfillment and happiness and joy. So that balances out all those other crazy things.
And that's like to live, how they say living in your 20% of what you do generates like most of your revenue, like the 20-80 rule that aligns with that. I like that.
It does. Yeah. Great point.
Now I lost my question that I was going to ask. I was going to say, now that you're living this life of helping others, I love that you offer something as people are listening to this podcast that we didn't know that we needed. Right? It's not like someone listening was like, you know what? I need to find out my strengths and figure things out and see what's cohesive in my values. So I think it's really cool that you've made everyone say, I wonder what I am. I'd like to take that test. You've piqued all of our curiosity because I don't care what business you're in, you can benefit from this exercise. So Denise, what is it like to work with you? I want you to walk through that first step of taking the test. And then how do we reach out to you? And, do you have several sessions? One, like, what's it look like?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And you're right. It's great. It brings me great joy that I get to do the part of my work that I did corporate for a long time, but I only got to do a teeny tiny bit of it, not even 20%. Now I get to do it every day. And so working with me, right? So the first thing we do is we just have a conversation to make sure that we connect, because this is personal work and you have to feel comfortable with me and I have to feel comfortable with you so that we know that we can actually get things done.
Right.
I've only had like one person where I said like we're just on a line, right? And that's okay. I'll find you someone.
Yeah.
And so once we establish that we can build that familiarity and trust in a relationship, then you do the strength finder as like the get-go of the engagement. Typically, people work with me in a 6-month block or a 12-month block as a kind of an average. I have some people who are ongoing, and I have some people who say, oh, could we do something shorter? And originally I would say yes, but what I would tell you is that less than 6 months makes it very hard to actually see results, because you're just really getting into the depth of the work and making then actions toward change. If you do it something shorter, it kind of falls flat. And so we start with Strength Finder and we look at first your top 10, and we do a deep dive of each of the strengths within the top 10. Communication, woo, analytics, strategic, futuristic, whatever it might be, individualization, ideation, that's my number one. And really talk about how it shows up at its highest, and also how it can be an Achilles for you, because sometimes our strengths can also be a challenge. By the way, we don't talk about weaknesses in the work that I do. It's flipping that idea of like traditional industrial mindset of work where you do this one productive manufacturing thing over and over again up on its head. So it's not about getting better at the things in your bottom zone. It's about understanding that and then finding ways to either offset, navigate, accept, or know when you have to pull yourself back up and get re-energized in this top zone. So we work on the top zone, then we go right to the bottom zone. And one of my favorite parts is when we talk about the bottom zone, I do this thing with everybody where I describe a job where you would be in your bottom zone every day. And it's so fascinating. Hearts do not happen. What actually happens is people physically have a physical reaction. People I have some people who are like, literally, I'm halfway through the description. And they're like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we learn all about all of those things. And I also help people understand how to navigate the tools that are provided by being in this work. They have a really robust website that provides all kinds of interesting tools and insight, as well as an app that will like, give you ideas every day about your strengths. And then we go to values and we do values iteration, and we do that over a little bit of time because it's better if you have some space to process and then come back to it. And all the while, we're really focusing also on what are the goals that we're going toward here and setting some high level goals, not 10, but maybe 2 or 3. Right. So that we are continuously kind of checking in and, hey, are we on track toward, or do we want to adjust? Right. And then once we do this value and the strength work, we do a value statement. And that then grounds us in where do we want to go next. And so for some people, I want to use that value statement to try to identify jobs and or companies that would be a better place for me to show up at my best. Sometimes it's like, wow, okay, now I understand why there's this disconnect in my business, and I'm going to go backwards to go forward. So I'm going to take some steps back and realign the way that I hire, the way that I speak in all of my interactions with my clients and my people. And we pull that all the way through and build that out in a way that's resonant to the grounding that we've built then.
Yeah. I love it. Denise, what is the easiest way for someone to find you? Do we go to your website? Do we find you on Instagram? That's where I hang out with you. What's the best?
Yeah, honestly, Instagram is probably the best. And LinkedIn. Instagram and LinkedIn are the places.
Oh, yeah. You are LinkedIn queen.
I am. I love LinkedIn.
You love LinkedIn. You have to create that LinkedIn course for the rest of us.
I do. You're right. Yes, I will. I got that. So yeah, either LinkedIn, Denise Beers-Kiepper, or on Instagram, DBK _coaching. And there's a spot in there where you can actually, message me to make an appointment, or you can go to my website and check me out there. But I would love to connect with anybody who's interested in learning more.
All right, Denise, such a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I love hanging out with you anytime I get that opportunity.
I know, same. I appreciate it so much, Erin.
Yep, you have been listening to Denise Beers-Kiepper on the Charleston Women Podcast.
Thanks for spending time with Charleston Women Podcast. Please like us and follow us on whatever platform you're using to access Charleston Women Podcast.